Hello, everyone. So, last month, Steam had a sale on Detroit Become Human, and I thought to myself, okay, you know what? I think it's about time I felt myself responding to Detroit Become Human. We're going to talk about some information about this game, and I'm going to reflect on it a little bit. Before we begin, though, I'm going to try to make this as spoiler free as I can. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the information within the first few missions, and those are going to be as much spoilers, maybe a little bit more than that. So if you don't consider the first few missions to be a spoiler, then you're good. If you do consider the first few missions to be a spoiler, go ahead and skip this video, watch one of my other videos. So let's go ahead and get started by talking about the setting and the premise of Detroit Become Human. So as the name implies, it takes place in Detroit, Michigan in the year 2038. That's 20 years after this game first came out in the year 2018. By the way, I'm filming this video in 2026. So there were androids sent by CyberLife to be integrated in human society and to serve the humans, doing things like cooking and cleaning and performing at Eden Club and so on. There, we see what humans in this game think about androids. Some people are, of course, all for androids because they do all the things that need to get done that the humans don't want to do, like, cooking and cleaning. And then some humans are strictly opposed to androids. They just hate how androids are basically taking all the jobs. And while I was playing this game, I honestly thought to myself that it honestly feels more relevant in modern day in 2026 than it does when it first came out in 2018. So let's go ahead and meet the main characters of this game. The first one is Connor. Connor is an android sent by CyberLife to assist the Detroit police in investigating deviants, aka rogue androids. And then we meet Kara. She is caring for a little girl named Alice. And then we have Marcus, who we meet him within the first few missions. He's caring for an old man named Carl Manfred, who is an artist. So, on a side note, I just want to take a moment to acknowledge that the voice actors and characters basically look exactly alike. I'm not going to go through all of them, mind you, but let's just go through a few. So, this is Connor's voice actor. I mean, they basically look exactly alike. Clancy Brown plays Lieutenant Hank Anderson. And, oh, come on. These two pretty much look exactly alike. And then we have Lance Henriksen, who plays Carl Manfred, the old man who Marcus is caring for. Come on. They look exactly alike. So, what themes did we explore in this game? We saw themes like the effects of artificial intelligence, how artificial intelligence impacts our lives in both positive and negative ways, and what humans think about artificial intelligence. We see that androids get abused, we see them get discriminated against and oppressed. We see free will, like androids start thinking to themselves, oh, am I just going to blindly follow along with whatever my human master says? Or am I going to be like, okay, everything stops here. I'm just going to do whatever I want to do. I think you're just straight up in the wrong. We explore identity and self discovery, kind of like characters like Kara and Marcus. And we think, do I, kind of like free will, do I want to be who I'm told to be? Or do I want to be who I want to be? Do I want to be who I need to be? And of course, we talk about themes like friendships and family, kind of like what we saw with Kara and Alice, or uh, like Marcus and Carl Manfred, and, Connor and Lieutenant Hank Anderson, and many others throughout this game. We see compassion or violence. Which is the right way for the androids to go? You know, some androids might think compassion is the good way to go, some think violence is the way to go, and then androids might disagree within themselves. And then we see how that has a broader impact on the main characters in the story, uh, supplementary characters in the story, the overall setting in Detroit and across the world and public opinion. And you start thinking to yourself, okay, well, if I, the player, want to make the androids more compassionate, well, how does that affect other androids? How does that affect humans? How does that affect public opinion? And then if public opinion and other androids is positive or negative, then how does that go back to me? And then what do I have to do? And then if I do that, then how does that go back and affect other androids and public opinion and so on? It's kind of like an endless feedback loop until you get to the end of the game. So those are some themes we explored. what type of game would I say this is? It's definitely very decision based. You know, like I said, the choices you make whenever you're playing one of the three main protagonists, and you think, okay, well, how do my choices impact my story? How do they impact the stories of the other characters in this game? How does it impact the entire setting, and so on? It's definitely the player choice is definitely important, similar to what we saw in games like Mass Effect. There are definitely a lot of quick time events in this game. You know, the closest thing we really have to combat in this game is when you're spamming the S keys and the D keys over and over again, and you might have to like not only spam them, but like, you know, mashing them like S S S S S or something. And then I would argue that this is a non-combat focused RPG, though I'm sure some people will disagree with me. Please let me know in the comments if you do. So, what is an RPG? It stands for role-playing game. What do you do in a role-playing game? You play a role in the game's story. And what do you do in Detroit Become Human? You play a role in the story. In fact, you play 3 roles in the overall story. So, I personally would call it an RPG, but others might disagree with me. So, what did I like about this game? Well, honestly, I thought the game's story was very well written. I thought, you know, I really liked watching how all the choices, you know, come back to help me or haunt me or whatever. And I really did enjoy meeting the characters, not just the 3 main protagonists, mind you, but other characters as well. And I enjoyed getting to know each of them and seeing how our friendship, whatever, plays out. And the graphics in this game are honestly really, really good. I definitely gonna have to give an A on whoever designed the graphics. And, you know, like I said earlier, understanding the impact of player choice. This is a very decision-based game. So, some of the cons I really did not like about this game are there is basically no skipping dialogue in this game. Now, when you're doing your first playthrough, no problem. Please do. When you're doing your second playthrough and everything after that, problem. You're over here going, ugh, okay, look, I know what happens. Just get to the point just so I can make my decision, and then I want to see how my new decision impacts the rest of this mission and all the other quests that follow after that. Like, ugh, come on. Like, honestly, that's part of the reason why this game took so long to play, because I just could not skip dialogue between characters. One thing I did not like is there were certain choices and information that were not obvious to me. I mean, for the most part, it was pretty obvious, but there were certain times in certain quests when I didn't know, I had no way of knowing that. I literally had to look it up on a game guide that, oh, I could have done that. I didn't even know. But, I mean, you know, that's one thing I definitely have a problem with when it comes to games overall. Like, if there's something I need to know about the game, shouldn't that be dead obvious from inside the game? So I don't have to pause the game and, you know, look it up on a game guide? Or, in this case, I'm doing it more so between playthroughs or between quests, so I can say, okay, what else should I know? What else was not obvious to me? And as some of you know, there is a certain unresolved plot point. There's a plot point that happens throughout the story that was never really understood. It was never explained in the game, and I tried looking it up, and yeah, apparently the writers of the story didn't really have it fully fleshed out either. So, yeah, that's definitely something that could have easily been fixed. But overall, I would say that it was a good game, and it was a good experience. So what I would recommend you do is first do one playthrough, so you can see the entire game, then do at least a second playthrough, so you can make some different choices, and then if you want to do a third and so on, that's totally up to you. I will, however, say this game's not worth $40. What I would do is I'd go on Steam, wishlist it, and just wait for a sale. I got this game for $8, and honestly, even that was a little too much. Maybe like 6 or 7, but once you got to 8, it's like, I didn't really care much. Yeah, I definitely would not spend $40 on this game. But now I want to take a moment to ask you, the audience, about your thoughts. Do you want to see me do more videos on Detroit Become Human? You know, we could talk about the different quests, and we could do quest guides, and, you know, I could talk about the controls and how to play this game effectively. We could talk about each of the characters in more detail, and we can analyze the character relationships. Like, like we could do Kara and Alice, or we could do Carl and Marcus. We could analyze them, or we could, of course, do Connor and Lieutenant Anderson, and so on. And of course, we can compare the setting of this game to modern day and try to see why this game was more relevant in modern day in 2026 than it was back in 2018. And of course, there are other games we certainly could talk about on the show. What do you think? Please let me know in the comments. Otherwise, have a crystalline wonderful day, and I'll see all of you in my next video.